AI tool helps to recover £500 million lost to fraud, the government has said. A lot of money. So a new AI tool designed to crack down on fraud has helped the UK government recover almost 500 million over the last year. During more than a third of the money clawed back related to fraudulent activity during the COVID-19 pandemic, remember that, with other cash being recouped from unlawful council tax claims and illegal subletting of social housing. The government will announce later, that's today, that a new tool which has helped to identify the fraud will now be licensed to other countries. Okay, there was me dumping on UK AI. I'm sorry, Peter Kyle. I didn't know you were. I didn't know your game. It's going to be licensed to other countries, including the US and Australia. Ooh. Civil liberty campaigners have previously criticised the Labour government for its use of AI in trying to counter fraud. That's a weird little sentence to insert there. I guess that's the BBC being balanced. But it doesn't sound very balanced because it makes it sound like the civil liberty campaigners are in favour of fraud. So it's a bit of an unfair sentence. So the Cabinet Office says that £480 million recovered in the 12 months from April 2024 is the largest sum ever reclaimed by government anti-fraud teams in a single year. Cool. The savings have been made by cross-referencing information held by different government departments as well as using a new AI tool. And ministers say the savings will now be used to recruit nurses, teachers and police officers. We'll see. That sounds good, but we'll see. Of the total sum recovered, 186 million was related to COVID fraud. So lots of people were taking out fraudulent things like bounce back loans. And so it's probably connected to stuff like that. Ministers have long vowed to claw back some of the money lost during the pandemic, but the 186 million recouped is a fraction of the amount Labour has previously said was missing. It did go missing under the Tories. The now Chancellor Rachel Reeves claimed that more than $7 billion of public money was lost to fraud during the pandemic. Ooh. These savings include the blocking of hundreds of thousands of companies with potentially fraudulent bounce-back loans from dissolving. Bounce-back loans were loans of £50,000 set up by the government during the pandemic to support businesses, but the scheme has been criticised for not being diligent enough and effectively inviting fraud, as companies that dissolved before paying back the money often then did not need to repay anything. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. That's a nice, easy fraud right there. So I actually looked into this tool that they've built. It's called the Fraud Risk Assessment Accelerator, and it was developed by researchers in the Cabinet Office, and now they're going to roll it across other government departments. I looked into it because often people will talk about AI tools, and it may be generative AI, it may be something else. Often it's like a predictive AI, especially in medical research, but this is generative AI. So it's the kind of modern form of AI that we have nowadays. This is specifically a large language model. So I pulled up their algorithmic transparency records, got a contact email and some information. So description is called the Fraud Risk Assessment Accelerator, which is currently being used for fraud and has claimed back half a billion, but it's going to be licensed to other countries and rolled out across other UK departments. So this is just a starting point, but it's an application that allows users to use generative pre-trained transformer, GPT, in order to generate draft fraud risk assessments, FRAs, by reference to a defined set of source documents for Streamlit web applications hosted in a cloud. It doesn't sound very complex, but they've managed to pull back $500 million with it. It has the templates for the fraud risk assessments, and then it has a bunch of source documents, and it allows you to feed in cases, potential cases, and then it will use GPT to generate a fraud risk assessment. So it sounds like previously this was all done manually, and it just took a long time to be able to process everything. And they're just using a GPT plus all of the source documentation to very quickly put together these FRAs. Sounds fairly simple, but it doesn't need to be complex for it to work. So our project involves the analysis of existing FRAs, fraud risk assessments. So they look at, I assume, successful fraud risk assessments, and they look at unsuccessful, and they say model these successful ones and use these unsuccessful ones as a kind of a negative example. FRAs are documents created to evaluate the fraud risks in schemes, e.g. grant schemes that government departments plan to implement. FRAs contain an outline of assessments and recommendations in mitigating risks of fraud in government schemes. We also use existing proposed government grant scheme briefs. These contain details of eligibility and other details of the proposed grant schemes. It's going through all their source document, basically. So it sounds like they've uploaded a bunch of guidance documents and good and bad examples. and then they run the information of cases, so potential fraud cases, into this, and it helps them to produce summaries, and then those summaries can be filed and the process begun. The purpose of the tool is to allow users to use GPT in order to generate draft FRAs, so it just saves them time. It's a very basic tool, really basic, but used in a very effective way to save a huge amount of money. This seems like something that could be built very quickly, like in a couple of weeks. I'm sure there's a lot more complexity and tuning it and taking it to deployment, etc. But this is not a very complicated sounding project. But this is really cool. You can actually look up and see all of the information about it. You cannot play with it, unfortunately, but that makes sense. But it has everything. It's got the model input, the model output, model architecture. They use GPT 4.1. They're using GPT 4.1 on it as well. Great. I think this is fantastic, and it's a really good use of artificial intelligence, and it's been successful. So I take back me being mean to UK AI. Of course, this is not building a foundation model. They're using ChatGPT, GPT 4.1 specifically, but that is fine. This is how most AI tools are built. You don't build the AI from scratch yourself because that's not feasible, nor is it a good idea from a business point of view, but you instead build upon an existing model, which is exactly what they've done.